The dracons, or thirds of zodiac signs, are symbolized by various animals, as we went over in the previous video. Today, what we're going to talk about is another system in the dracon that overlays on top of these animal symbolisms to distinguish between them. So in other words, there's like 9 warrior dracons and there's 3 vulture dracons, etc. What makes them different from each other? One of the things is this additional system that I'm going to explain today, which is whether or not your attitude towards an aggressor is reconciliative or retributional. So let's make sure that we're clear about what reconciliation and retribution means. Reconciliation will try to look for some way that you and your opponent, or you and the aggressor, have some way that you can mutually benefit. So this attitude tries to avoid combat. On the other hand, retribution engages in combat. It prefers combat. It feels that there is nothing in common with this threat. There is no way for you to coexist with this threat. It just has to be destroyed. So it responds with combat. And then there is neither. There's a way to be neither reconciliative nor retributional. In this attitude, you kind of just like let the aggressor be, because you are waiting for the aggressor to kind of ruin himself or give up on the aggression or something. So reconciliation actively tries to avoid combat. Retribution actively tries to get into combat. And this third type of non-engagement, it's not really trying to avoid combat, but it does have that effect in the long run because it tends to make the combat diffuse. It's not a value judgment that reconciliation is better than retribution or something like that. There's just 2 different styles of dealing with aggression. Whether or not it's good or bad kind of depends upon whether or not it's appropriate for that particular aggressor and that particular type of aggression. Like trying to reconcile with somebody that's invading your house is probably not a good idea. You should be retributional to that person. But trying to reconcile and negotiate with somebody whom you're having competition with for a particular market or something, that is a good idea. See, so sometimes retribution is really great. Sometimes reconciliation is really great. To show you where these 3 types of attitudes are in the Dracon zodiac, let's use these 3 symbols. A white square for reconciliation, a black square for retribution, and a gray circle for neither of the 2. The reconciliation dracons are found in the cardinal signs as the first dragon, and the fixed signs as the middle dragon, and in the dual signs as the last dragon. The retribution signs are found in the cardinal signs as the last dragon, fixed signs as the first dragon, and also the dual signs as the first dragon. The rest of them are neither reconciliative nor retributional. Now where this gets very interesting is to overlay it on top of the animal symbolism in the dragons. The warrior dragons have 1 of each type. So the first dragon of Aries has a reconciliative nature to it. The last dragon of Aries has a retributional aspect to it. So the first warrior in Aries, the warrior that's in the first dragon of Aries, is not trying to get into battles. It's not that it's not a warrior, but it's trying to use its armor and its weapons to encourage negotiations. Whereas the warrior that's in the last Dracon of Aries is looking for battle. They're looking for something and somebody that needs to be destroyed. If you take a look at the vulture Dracons, there is no vulture Dracon that has a reconciliative nature. If you look at the serpent Dracons, there is no serpent Dracon that is neither reconciliative nor retributional. Each serpent Dracon is either retributional or reconciliative, and it's mostly retributional. It's just the last serpent of Pisces. That serpent Dracon is reconciliative. It's trying to use its stealthiness and kind of fearsomeness to encourage the opponent to compromise. Interestingly, the wolf dracons do not have a retributional one. It's probably because they're so teamworky that it's difficult to just always attack everything. When you're working in a team, things take longer. So there's two wolf dracons that are reconciliative, and there's two wolf dracons that are neutral. It doesn't mean that wolves are nice, but they're trying to use their wolf qualities, their understanding of how to get strong allies to terrorize enemies, for the purpose of creating reconciliations, creating negotiations, creating agreements that mutually satisfy. Interestingly, the two reconciliative wolf packs were George Washington and Michael Moore, as opposed to the other two, which were McCarthy and Mussolini. Then the remaining four animals, which each only have one dracon, you can see here they don't have any retributional. These animals are more sophisticated and they're not as attacky. Now, this same system of reconciliation and retribution really helps us with understanding the non-predator dracons. Now we can identify three different types of prey dracons. The first is the reconciliative, which we could characterize as like a bunny. Then the neutral prey dracons, we could characterize it as a deer. They have a little bit more of a capacity to defend themselves, and therefore a little bit less of a need to negotiate. And finally, the retributional prey dracons, we could characterize this as an animal like a porcupine or something. This animal has a lot of ability to defend itself. It's just not an aggressor. Now let's talk about how to use this for interpretations. I'll show you the first thing that my report does. What report, you ask? This is the new report that I have on the zodiac subdivisions, which you can get at my website, victorcara.com. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video. I'll give a link to it in the description below. I'll show you now one of the ways that that report interprets this dynamic in your dracon. The first thing that you want to do is just tally up the number of planets that your chart has in each particular type: reconciliation, retribution, or neither. So here's an example chart so I can walk you through it. This chart has a lot of planets in retributional dracons: the ascendant, Rahu, Moon, Sun and Mars, Ketu, and Jupiter. Tally all that up, and that's 6 planets plus the ascendant. Give the ascendant 2 points because it's the ascendant. So come up with a tally of 8. The same chart has 0 planets in reconciliative dracons. And it does have a few planets in these neutral dracons: Saturn, for example, Mercury, and Venus. So we would give 3 points to the non-engagement neutral type of attitude. Now we're going to be able to interpret these values, and the last step towards doing so is just to convert them into a percentage. So divide them by the maximum number 11, and you'll find out the percentage of each. So my report gives you the information in a very easy to digest way like this. This particular chart is 73% punishing, 73% retributional, and 0% forgiving, 0% reconciliative. Notice it's only 73%. How come it's not 100%? Because there were some planets that were neither retributional nor reconciliative. The more that your chart has planets in the retributional dracons, the more you have a kind of a punishing nature, which means you're not tolerant. You don't tolerate people aggressing at you. Since you're not tolerant of combat, you don't sit around and let it go on. You immediately engage with it. And you don't compromise it, and you just try to eradicate the cause of it. The more you have planets in the reconciliative dracons, the more patience you have in conflicts. Therefore, the more you can kind of negotiate or find some common ground with the aggressor and kind of encourage them away from aggression. So the type of person that's more reconciliative is the type that's more encouraging and optimistic. So even with enemies and conflicts, they tend to be optimistic And that optimism tends to encourage the enemy to give up the enmity. Versus the punishing type, which is more pessimistic, it doesn't encourage the enemy to give up the enmity at all. Like, encourages the enmity and then attacks it and destroys it. Then there's the middle ground between the two extremes. The more that the bars balance each other out, the more that you're neither punishing nor forgiving. So, for example, if you were 100% punishing, then you could react to situations that require conflict very effectively. But you would react very poorly in situations that require compromise and negotiation. Look, where a person needs to be punished, you would be perfect. But where a person needs to be encouraged to improve, you would be awful. Conversely, if you're 100% in the forgiving side, then you're really great at encouraging wherever the situation would call for encouragement, but you're really weak where the situation calls for punishment. If you're in the middle, you're good at either one, but not as good. You're moderately good at either one. And you tend to just kind of wait and let the things kind of happen on their own. I thought it would be interesting to look at some classical aggressive figures to see what their percentages are like from my report. If you run my report on Mussolini, for example, he's 100% punishing. He's not 100% punishing because he has some neutral dracons, but he has zero forgiveness. Kind of makes sense with him. But compare that to Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler is way more in the middle, and he's even a little bit more on the forgiving side. How could Adolf Hitler be more on the forgiving side? It makes perfect sense because Adolf Hitler is more of the statesman and the politician and the person who is coordinating teams and encouraging people to join him. Not really by brute force like Mussolini, but by actual encouragement and utilization of other people's talents. If you want to know how you would compare and what your balances are, I have released the report, as I mentioned, that will tell you that. So to get that report, go to my website, vicdecara.com. I'll put the link in the description below. Go to the reading section and then look for the module that says subdivisions. You can get the other modules too, like the basic one, whatever else you want. But if you want this information, it's in the subdivisions module. Click on the button to enter your birth data and then click on the button to buy it, and it's yours. I have a bunch more videos coming up about this theme of the animals and the dracon. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel and you have notifications turned on and you're paying attention to it, because they're going to be really interesting and they're coming out very soon. Thank you. This particular chart